Hi, I'm Justin Kantor. With an array of accomplishment in the world of R&B, pop, musical theater, and movies, Freda Payne has transcended the changing styles and trends of contemporary song over the course of 5 decades. While listeners from several generations instantly recognize her golden tones as the vocal conduit of timeless hits such as Band of Gold, Bring the Boys Home, and Deeper and Deeper, many do not realize just how prolific she has been on stages across the world. On the occasion of the upcoming release of Come Back to Me Love, she recently chatted with me about the many phases of her versatile career and how she's coming full circle stylistically with her latest endeavor. Here are excerpts from Now and Then with Justin Kantor, Freda Payne. Enjoy. From what I've read, it was during your teenage years that you really realized your artistic inclinations, but I have to ask you, it's been a burning question for me as a fan all these years. I have read that you and your younger sister Sherry, when you were about 5, I guess, cut a record called Hey Boppitybop at a local store where you could cut an acetate for like $1 or something. Is that true? And can you tell me about that?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
I think we were maybe younger than that. I may have been. I mean, when we listen to it, we crack up because I think Gregory, that's my son's name. I think Sherry probably must have been about like 3.
Right.
I mean, the way the sound of our voices and the articulation was almost like I was probably like maybe 4 or 5. Sherry was like about 3 because you could tell it in her voice. Sound like a toddler, you know.
Oh wow!
Like she sang eh eh ba 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 eh ba.
So that was something fun, I guess you did. But am I right in that it wasn't really to your teenage years, your early teenage years, that you got kind of serious about music as far as singing?
Well, I didn't even know I had talent till I was 12.
Okay.
And that's how, and it was my piano teacher that discovered that.
So,
she thought she was looking for, she was auditioning her piano students for the next piano recital. Mm-hmm. And she said, Freda, I'd like to hear your voice. And so to see if you're good enough to be in the ensemble.
Okay.
And I sang for her, and she said, oh, Freda, she says, I not only want you to be in the ensemble, solo.
Oh, wow.
And that was my first solo, the first time I really probably sang, in front of a real audience.
So then how did you make the jump from that to doing something like, I think, was it the Jimmy Wilkins Big Band? Was that the band you were in as a teenager that you would practice?
Jimmy Wilkins found out about, heard about me, because what happened, I started to enter talent contests around the city, and then I was entering a talent contest that was on television.
Oh.
It was station WXYZ Channel 4 in Detroit, and the show was called Ed McKenzie's Dance Hour.
Okay.
And Ed McKenzie was like was the local version of Dick Clark's American Bandstand.
Uh-huh.
And but more so than Dick Clark, he had like the teenagers dancing to the latest pop records, mm-hmm. and then he would feature whatever artist would be in town performing, headlining at a top nightclub in the Detroit area.
Oh.
Like, for instance, Sammy Davis Jr. was performing once, and he was a guest artist on the show. And then they featured a talent contest, and they would have just 4 acts. Well, I won that contest, and then after that, and then I did Ted Mack when I was 16.
Oh.
And Ted Mack was like in New York, and so that was a national TV show, and that today Ted Mack would be American Idol or let's say X Factor. And also I sang on the radio from the time I was 13 until I was 16 on a show called Make Way for Youth.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And it was called Don Large's Make Way for Youth, mm-hmm. and it emanated from the Fisher Building, the iconic building in Detroit that is located directly across the street from office buildings that used to house the original General Motors offices.
Okay.
And I used to live, as a child, we used to live like about 3 blocks from there.
Oh, okay.
And the Fisher Building is still there, and it's still in great shape. And WJ was the radio station was station WJR, and it was located like in the penthouse.
Mm-hmm.
and they had a big band, and it was a chorus.
Okay.
And I was part of the chorus. And Don Large, who was in charge of everything, it was his show. He used to ask me to do solos, now and then.
Okay, so
that exposure as well.
So you were a big part of the local scene.
I was.
So
and that's how I became. That's how I came to the attention of Berry Gordy, who was at that time a struggling, hustling songwriter.
Now, you stayed in Detroit for a while, but eventually I think you made the decision to go to New York on your own.
I didn't stay in Detroit too much longer after I graduated from high school. I graduated from high school when I was 16, and then I went to New York when I was 18.
Okay. And from what I understand, you met Quincy Jones while you were there.
Yes, I met Quincy Jones, I think really like within the first few months of being in New York.
So tell me, what prompted your move to New York first? I'll start with that, I guess. What made you decide on New York?
Well, I figured I didn't see that much future in Detroit at the time,
mm-hmm.
and especially after the experience with Berry. It was sort of like, and mind you, I mean, we all think of you when you hear the word Motown and Berry Gordy, everybody thinks like, oh, wow, big time success, ultimate success. There was none of that happening.
Right. It was
it was Berry at that time was out there, struggling and hustling like a lot of people that I met in New York when I went to New York, who were songwriters, producers. Everybody was out there looking to, get their projects going or trying to find their next hit, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that was Berry, of course. But he was a workaholic, and he moved fast, and eventually he got he got that Tamala label, and then his sister Gwen, she got a label, and
mm-hmm.
and I think Anna got Anna Records, and
then, right, yeah,
she had all them, and with Pamela and Gwen and all that. But anyway, in the meantime, I was kind of like saying, well, hey, I'm going to New York. I'm going to New York to seek my fame and fortune. I'm not going to hang around here.
Yeah.
And I just left. I told my mother and father I wanted to go to New York, and they let me go.
Oh, cool.
They supported me. They financially supported me.
That's great. So I was curious, being there in New York throughout the 60s, because a few years would pass before you ended up striking, I guess what we could refer to as your sort of breakout deal with Holland-Dozier-Holland and Invictus. Did you, throughout that time, as you mentioned, commercial success was somewhat limited for the recordings you were doing. Did you still feel strongly that no matter what, this was going to be what you were going to do for life, or did you ever have any doubts or end up working in other fields, or how did that kind of go with that passing of time, say, between MGM and when you eventually hooked up with Invictus?
Well, to tell you, that's an interesting question. After when I did How Do You Say I Don't Love You Anymore, and after when I was doing that, I was working in Vegas. I was working with Lionel Hampton's band.
Oh, okay.
I was doing other little, other things as well, like performing with the Smothers Brothers.
Oh, really? Okay.
In Lake Tahoe or Reno, Nevada.
Uh-huh.
I was doing other things, and even in 1968. Oh God! I mean, some things I've forgotten, but Victor Borga. I worked with Victor Borga in the theaters in the Round.
Nice.
I mean, I was sort of like I was trying to fashion myself kind of like behind Lena Horne in a way. Then Diane Kell was another person that I modeled myself behind. So I wanted to do the classy thing. I never did the Chitlin circuit.
Okay.
I was always working supper clubs. And
did you ever do?
That's just how I rolled back then. And what happened was after I did the record on MGM Grand, I was still living in New York. I eventually auditioned for a Broadway musical to be an understudy, and I auditioned for a show called Hallelujah Baby on Broadway, where I was understudying Leslie Uggam.
Oh, nice.
And this was 1967.
Wow, okay.
Right after, a year after I did that album. And I was Leslie's understudy, and I was the only understudy to go on. I went on 5 times.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a pretty good number, right?
Yeah, that's a pretty good number, because she had 2 other understudies who never got to go on.
Wow. And what was that feeling like?
And I did that. That was 67, and then by 68, after the show closed, that's when I met. It was in 68 when I signed with Invictus.
Okay, so it really was a short time, actually. So
yeah, everything kind of like, it wasn't that far apart. I mean, it was like maybe a year apart or 3 years. Like from doing the album on Impulse in 63, it was 3 years later I did the album on MGM.
Did you ever do...
And then in 65, I hope you're recording this.
Oh, I am, yeah.
Yeah, and then in 1965, I went to Europe for the first time, and one of the countries I visited and I stayed and worked in was Sweden.
Really?
And when I was in Stockholm, I did an album in Sweden. It's called Freda in Stockholm.
Oh, I didn't know it had been done that early. I had seen reference to that, but so that was done in 65. Okay.
That was in 1965.
Wow. Now,
that was my second album.
That's something else. So now you're working with Artistry Music. You have a new CD coming out called Come Back to Me Love, which of course is notable for sort of coming full circle from what we were talking about earlier with not MGM, but Impulse. And from what I understand, you've been doing a lot of jazz gigs over the last 5 years or so. I've been the last... It kind of started after Ella Fitzgerald passed away in 96.
Okay. And I kind of like decided I was going to start doing a tribute to Ella Fitzgerald full out.
Okay.
You know. And I started doing that. And then in 2004, I got a call from Maurice Hines, and he said that theater located in New Brunswick, New Jersey, wanted to produce and wanted to do the Ella Fitzgerald First Lady of Song play, and Maurice was reaching out to me. He said, I want you, Freda, I'd like you to do it, and I'm asking you first. And so I did it, and then after that was done, we got rave reviews. Then after that was done, I started doing it solo by my, like as a tribute to Ella. I started doing a one-woman concert tribute to Ella for the next several years. And then just last year, he called me again and said, there's a theater located in Alexandria, Virginia called Metro Stage. It's a regional theater, and they're going to have a reading of Ella at the Kennedy Center in like the end of August in 2013. Oh. And I'd like you to do that, and we'd like you to once again reprieve your role in doing Ella Fitzgerald, First Lady of Song. And so I did that. I just did that, and I got a rave review in the Washington Post.